Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Bomb Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. And now, let's start the show. Hello, guys. Welcome to the Bomb Squad. We're back with our Hellraiser franchise rundown. I'm wearing a Mortal Kombat shirt because I don't have a Hellraiser shirt, but I feel like there's chains involved. It's like hell. Scorpions like Pinhead. It's all good. But anyway, we're covering Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth from 1992. And we've brought a special guest. We've brought back Derek. How are you, Derek?
I am good. I have a question, Andrew.
Yes.
Who is your main in Mortal Kombat?
My main it's gotta be it's gotta be Raiden. I don't know why I like Raiden so much.
Because
I
you
think
love Christopher Lambert.
when you played it on the Game Gear, you could do the Raiden tornado thing and just kill anyone, and so it was very easy to win. And so he's stuck with it. Who's yours?
Well, I'll just admit I've only played Mortal Kombat 11. Never played any of the other games. Um, I really like Jade and Scarlet. Jade and Scarlet are probably.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, and Rain.
Nice. Yeah, I feel well, and I'm like one of those Mortal Kombat where when a new game comes out, at least since they started coming out like on the Xbox and they made their combos easier again, I will play as every character just to kind of see who gets the ending. So I've played as everyone.
Sure.
Usually it's like the kids who aren't that good, like Johnny Blade and Sonya Blade's kids aren't that good at it. But like even like and Mortal Kombat's one of the ones where they don't do that thing. Like other than there's like Scorpion is overpowered, but then everyone else is pretty similarly powered. So like they don't do the thing where they make the girls a little bit less powered, which I like because I like the girls to like toss someone across the screen with their legs.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because what got me into Mortal Kombat was Injustice. I had played Injustice and Injustice 2, and then I got Mortal Kombat 11 like a year ago, and had a great time with it. Love that you can play RoboCop, I think. That's so fun. And Rambo. Like, that's kind of fun,
Turtles, right? The Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
The Ninja Turtles are in Injustice 2, but yes, that is also... It's a similar vibe of like, why is this happening? But also, hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I don't know if they're ever going to do this, but I'm hoping that they're collecting all these franchise guys so that they can make their own horror fighting video game because I think that'd be super cool. I don't think logistically it would ever work because of rights issues, but how cool would it be to like have? Because right now you could have like. They've never been able to put Freddy and Jason in the same game, but like you can have Freddy like killing an alien, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, I heard I missed out on Mortal Kombat X, or Mortal Kombat 10, if you want to, be a dick, because that one has Jason, Leatherface, Alien, and Predator in it.
Yeah.
And that's like obviously so my thing. I love all four of those franchises. but never played it. Probably never will.
And I don't know if you know this, but if you get that one and you get Alien and Predator, you can turn Jax gets a special skin so that you can dress him like Carl Urban from Predator 1. And when you kill him, you can tear off his arm and he tries to shoot you.
Is that
It's the
real?
funnest thing. Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
super fun.
Well, they should have made him Danny Glover from Predator 2.
That would have also worked. He actually fits Danny Glover. Well, because
I don't know.
he's
They're
an
both
army guy now.
they're both cops, basically.
Yeah.
Oh man. Speaking of Predator 2, this Hellraiser 3 kind of gave me Predator 2 vibes, if that makes
Oh
sense.
well, now that we're back, now that Josh is putting us back on
Our track
he's
that
reining us in, I guess.
He's not exactly wrong though, right? Like
yeah, it's
He
very
does
like
go.
it's like I would argue that Hellraiser 1 takes place in the real world almost. And then Predator or Hellraiser 3 takes place in the cartoon
Well,
Predator 2 world, if that makes
Before we
sense.
go on, Josh, give us a description of Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth 1992's JD Monroe, the best character of all time.
JP, JP
JP.
bro, not JD. And
Okay,
The initial
Eric
stand
is
for that.
trying to strong arm me now, but I just want to be clear that I asked him earlier if he wanted to be on the JP Monroe podcast, and he didn't know who that was.
yeah, well, because you said JD, you said JD.
Well, he doesn't. He never pronounces it correctly, so I feel like I shouldn't have to pronounce it.
Many other characters do though.
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah,
Josh, what's this movie about?
it's a reporter who's looking for a hot scoop and gets a little more than she's bargained for? Question mark.
Yes, perfect. But yeah, I'm going back to your original point. I do feel like if you look at like Predator 2, Hellraiser 3, Demolition Man, they all take place in this weird 90s LA. It's not necessarily real, but it's like, what if
Yeah.
LA had like Warriors style gangs and we just pretended that this was actually happening?
Hellraiser 3
Like,
explicitly takes place in New York City.
yeah, but it feels like because it was clearly
It's like,
not.
you know what it is?
wasn't
'Cause
filmed in New York City.
we just watched End of Days, which also takes place in New York City, but was clearly just filmed in LA. And this looks the exact same as End
Yeah.
of Days. So
And until and every time that they tell us it's in New York City, I immediately disregard that because it's so much like Los Angeles, California. But yes, okay. So what did you guys think of this movie?
I mean, me personally, I think it's better than 2. I think
I have to say, we saw 2 again, and I was like, oh, this wasn't as it was a little bit more shaky than I remember. I have to say, Hellraiser 3, it might be better for me. It might be better than 2. I really liked it.
I think both of you are nuts. I think you guys like Freddy's dead, so like I'm not like I know who I'm talking to, right? But like,
Don't use that against
do
me.
you not like
Can't use
do you not
evidence.
like whimsy in film?
no, I actually really don't like whimsy.
I'm sorry that my imagination is still open to
Our take was so atrocious. He's got a
Better
coughing
than
fit.
Hellbound. Better than Hellbound. You must be joking. No, this is the third best Hellraiser movie, and that is, I will fully admit that. But it is firmly in Jesus Christ, third place. That was
Okay, so real fast, because we've jumped a bunch of tiers, but yes, Hellraiser 3, it was not directed by Clive Barker. He wasn't involved. It was directed by Anthony Hickox and Peter Atkins did the original story, who he did part 2, right? Derek, catch me on any of this. It stars Terry Farrell, Doug Bradley. Terry Farrell's from Deep Space Nine, guys. I don't know if you knew that. And it also stars Paula Marshall from The Program, who I feel like every time I saw her to be honest, 90% of the reason I like this movie is because of Paula Marshall, because I had a crush on her as a kid, and it's continued to this day. But yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like there's so much going on in this movie because it starts off with Terry Farrell and she's playing Joey and she's like a reporter, but she's not getting any good gigs. She's like getting like
the terrible gigs that you get when you're not really a good reporter. And so she wants a good gig, and so they're like, "Hey, you got." And first of all, they have a scene where they're like in the newsroom, and then the editor comes in, and he's like, "You got to show more skin."
You've worked in newsrooms. Does that happen, Andrew?
Well, they do kind of tell you what to wear or not wear, but if anything, it usually goes the other way, where they tell you to be more conservative.
See,
but
the opening is weird though, because she's covering a story where they're like, "Oh, not a lot of accidents in the emergency room right now. Like no one's. It's like empty and abandoned." And I was like, "Oh, is this like a weird like because at the end of Hellraiser 2, all the Cenobites get destroyed?" I was like, "Oh, is it like the Cenobites aren't around, so like deaths are down?" But it's like, no, totally unrelated. That does not come back. It was just a weird reason for her to be in a hospital.
Well, Hell on Earth hasn't gotten here yet, Josh. I don't know if you knew that, but it doesn't get here until Hellraiser comes.
Right. But you know what I mean.
I like the implication that like the Cenobites were causing so many deaths that like for that like they're not Jason. Like
that
it's not
he gets
notable.
around.
To be fair, in this movie, Pinhead kills so many people.
Yeah.
Yes, he kills hundreds of people. I was
But
surprised.
they also like
Okay.
they do imply in this movie that just the presence of a box will like make things more Cenobite-esque.
So here's the thing. So like there's also a club owner by the name of J.P. Monroe, and he has the best haircut that I've ever seen on screen. And he like collects art of like gross art, like
His
like
haircut's so bad I thought he was homeless in the first scene that he's introduced.
He kind of looks like what Harry Osborn looks like in the comic books, where he has big floppy hair. But J.P. Monroe, he loves to collect horror things, and he has a girlfriend that's Paula Marshall. And well, kind of like a girlfriend. Anyway, her name's Terry, and she's like a club girl, and she's like, "Oh, I'll help you find some art." And so she finds him
the pillar. Can I just say too, my main complaint? No, this is another thing this movie has over too. The pillar in part 2 at the end, dreadful arts and craft project. This pillar, quite good.
Well, that pillar was a last minute addition, so we don't hold that against.
I know, but I'm saying like clearly this is what they wanted the pillar to be,
Yeah. Well, it's also like the last one, they didn't know if they were going to bring it back. It was only for one
right,
scene.
But it's a good link. It's almost like the pillar developed itself, It's cool.
And JP gets the pillar, and Pinhead is stuck in the pillar. And so a lot of the movie is Pinhead, logistically, it's Doug Bradley, and he's like in this like giant thing that they've built for him just to put his face in, so you can see him. And
well, we could.
It had to.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you. We get a good 30 minutes into the movie before Doug Bradley even comes alive.
Yeah.
So like, it doesn't have a lot of Pinhead, but it uses him a lot once he's there, right? Yeah. Like, it's funny that he shows up way later and also is on screen for so much longer than he is in the first Hellraiser.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's the thing about the pillar that I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the pillar, you see the lament configuration. But also they also have the lament configuration just kind of hanging around the whole movie. So what the hell was that one? Is there multiple ones? Does anyone know?
They broke it off. They broke it off.
Okay.
That they that's why he so the kid that gets exploded in that first scene, right? He has the box in his hands. And then later we see the pillar and there's a big hole in it and JP sticks his hand in and the rat bites him. That's what the box was. Because also Terry, when they're in the apartment, says this was on like the statue, like he broke it off the statue or something.
Right, but then later, and this might just be a continuity error where they use some previously used footage, but there's a scene right before Leatherface, or right when Terry sees the pillar, once she knows what it is, where they're going around it and you see the box again, and I'm starting to think that was a continuity error. They just
That
kind of
could
used that
be.
footage.
They might have shot that scene first, and they only had the
Yeah.
one pillar, so they had to actually break it, and they couldn't.
Because I was like, I thought it broke off, and then I was like, maybe it grows back after a while, and then I was just very confused from that one shot. Continuity, it's not that important, but sometimes it
If
is.
we want to talk about continuity, Pinhead can just kill people in this movie. He doesn't even need
Yeah,
it.
Not only
Yeah,
that,
he-
but he
And that's not
he
a
can make
criticism.
you
I
he
think
can-
that's so fun. But
it's a little Freddy's too, or Nightmare on Elm
It
Street
does
too,
feel
where it's
very
like, you know
Freddy's 2,
what? He just kills everyone he meets, but he can like make a bunch of people into Cenobites who were not really like
even involved. Yeah,
like pleasure seeking. Like they're just like, oh, I got you. You're a Cenobite now. Like the guy he hits with
JP
combat
makes
fists.
sense. JP makes sense to become a Cenobite.
Yeah.
But I think he becomes a Cenobite a little too early. Like the second person he tries to feed to Pinhead, and you're all you get like, my God,
So,
rule of threes. Come on.
and I agree. So okay, so JP Pinhead starts talking to JP, and he tells him like, "Oh, I need blood to come out," and so JP like, there's a long extended sequence where JP's like having a conversation, and see that's one of the things I liked, and I like it even more a little bit later, and I'll bring it up. But you do get a lot of because Pinhead's stuck in this pillar, and he can't. He's really powerless, and so he has to use his
Well, like he
persuasion.
can get you if you're close.
Yeah, he can get, but you
He
have
has
to
like a
be like
2-foot
this
reach.
close. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so he has to use his brains to like figure stuff out. And luckily, he's been owned by the most morally dubious man ever put on screen. And so, but I do like that aspect of him that they kind of really like. They could have easily had Pinhead like leave the pillar as soon as the box left the pillar, and had him just kind of become adjacent. But the fact that they really kind of like took their time with it, I think it really is on one of the movie's sides, you know?
Yeah. I also thought the reporter was pretty good. I don't know, the idea of a reporter looking into crazy horror movie deaths. I feel like I'm like, that
Yeah.
No,
tracks.
I think the story is actually pretty strong.
Mhm.
That said, I have some problems with this script. Namely, that it feels like a first draft of a Hellraiser 3 script. There's so many things that are like, this feels weird or disjointed.
There is when she's looking, she's trying to find the girl who like was in the hospital when that guy got like killed by chains. And so she just goes to bars like, I'm looking for a pretty girl. And the bartender's like, oh yeah, go over there. It's like, this is a bar. There's a woman every 5 feet.
Yeah. Well, maybe the bartender's just really like,
Like
cool.
that
He's
felt
like,
like a filler line they never replaced.
he's like, pretty girl. There, I find every girl pretty, and so he just sends her to the first. Well, and I think like, okay, here's I usually don't like to like rewrite a script, but I kind of feel like, and I like Terry Farrell, I like her character, I like the way they switched it, I like the way she did it, but I feel like Joey and Terry, especially near the end, should have switched places because Terry to me is a much more interesting character. She has much more to gain and to lose, and I feel like if they had kept Joey as the kind of like psycho character, like the Vivian Lee, who like she spends the whole you spend the whole first half with her, and then she's taken out, and it kind of like sets the stakes, and it also flips everything on its head. I feel like that would have made this movie even better than part two, which it already is on the verge.
Is not. But I disagree because mostly because I don't think that works with the tone the movie's going for. I think it's so Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth is a movie that is ultimately quite silly, right?
Right.
But I feel like it isn't silly in spite of itself, not like it's not silly because it wants to be silly. I feel like the tone, if you're just looking at the story beats, it's a pretty operatic like tragedy.
Mhm.
And for that reason, the most boring character needs to be the main character because every character you invest in has to have an unhappy ending. And
That yeah,
so that I like. I think again, it's just that I think they rush into the final sequence too early. I think this movie has a really short second act,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the third act is too long. It starts too early. Because I would argue the third act starts as early as when Terry leaves Joey's apartment, and
yeah,
there's a good 40 minutes left in the movie of this 98-minute movie. I don't actually
yeah.
know.
Well, and to do like a quick rundown of the plot structure of this movie, like so the whole first act is pretty long, and it's just kind of like introducing Terry, introducing JP, introducing Joey, introducing the pillar, and then you have the pillar like coming to life, and then it's kind of like gaining sentience, and then JP realizes that if he feeds Hellraiser blood, it starts to become more alive. And so then they have like this huge thing, and JP doesn't want to do it, but then Pinhead knows things that he shouldn't. And so he eventually convinces JP to do it. And so JP has to bring like sacrifices to Pinhead. And then he does it once, and then he does it again. And on the second time, the whole movie, that's what Derek was saying. Like, that's one of the big climaxes of the movie because
Yeah,
I'm just going to
it
spoil it.
does
Like
kick into high
he
gear.
brings Terry, and as soon as he brought Terry, I was like, no, it's too soon to bring
And by the
Terry.
way, she is on screen as a Cenobite for less than a minute.
Yeah, yeah,
That is true. That
And
was
that's,
very like,
again, like 20 minutes later.
right.
yeah, but the compact disc guy is as a Cenobite for like
Jesus.
10 full minutes.
And, yeah, so like okay, so
Looking one.
yeah, the CD guy really like the camera guy. I could be like, okay, it doesn't make sense. It works.
Well, they even
CD
kind of
guy,
imply the camera guy's in love with the reporter, so you can almost be like, "Oh, Pinhead like
definitely.
played that." The CD
Yeah.
guy was just a guy in the marsh standing there who's like, "Ah,
Yeah, and the barbed wire guy. Why is the barbed
Yeah.
wire guy's power to blow fire?
Both-
That doesn't make sense. Why
Yeah.
does CD guy only move in robotic? Like, that doesn't really make sense.
It's funny because it's
Also,
not
I-
even
what
real.
is the?
Oh, go ahead.
I just checked. This movie is 93 minutes. That is the exact same runtime as both Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. The problem is, this story is so much bigger than the story in both Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2, despite having roughly the same amount of central characters.
Right.
And that's always just going to cause. If there was ever a Hellraiser movie that needed to be 2 hours long, it certainly wasn't the one that came out last year. It was this one.
Yes. Yeah.
I could agree with that.
And I also like it is because not only do they do that, but like I mean, these are all completely different characters. They spend a lot of time recapping part 1 and 2 when they don't need to spend as much time as they do doing it. And like it's kind of cool that they do because it connects everything. But considering, like you said, that it's such a short length and they're literally bringing Pinhead to the planet Earth as opposed to like being in his kind of pseudo half and half place that he had been living. You'd think that they would have spent more time with that, but no, they really like don't have the time. But they do have the time to like have us watch Kirsty on like a video, like explaining what the Cenobites are.
I
We
like
like a lot of that.
that was fun. I always like it when we get a little cameo from a final girl.
Right.
If I was rewriting the script, like this is just me, as like if I got this draft handed into me and I was told to like punch it up or whatever, I'd add 10 pages. I would cut the CD and the barbed wire Cenobites completely because why? I would give Doc as a Cenobite and as a character more to do. And then I would have more time with JP and Terry as Cenobites, and a little more time between Terry and Joey, just between the two of them, because I like their relationship so much. I think it's so fun.
Mhm.
This is the Nightmare 2 of Hellraiser movies. I know you already made that comparison, not just because Pinhead's powers are very different compared to what they used to be, but also it's very, very lesbian coded. Terry and Joey have a very intimate relationship, and in a romantic comedy, if Terry or Joey was a man in this movie came out in 1992, they would have been love interests,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so I think I would have focused on those elements, cut a lot of the extraneous, like edgy images, like stuff at the boiler room that feels pointless. I don't know.
I will say my criticism, what I would cut if we're doing script doctor, I would get rid of good World War II Pinhead. Get him out of there.
I would get rid of all the dream stuff. It's so fucking stupid.
And the dream stuff, like, you keep expecting it to matter more, but it really, like, I mean, he kind of. And then, okay, so she's having these dreams, and Pinhead in World War II is like.
She's having her dreams of her father dying in Vietnam. Her father.
And also, it mixes. Yeah, it also mixes all together.
Right,
but here's the thing. Pinhead, good Pinhead gives her the most basic.
I call him Goodhead.
Advice, yeah. Flathead, yeah, he gives them the most basic advice that I could have. Like, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna need the box." If it was her, I'd be like, "Yeah, no shit." The thing that came off of the pillar that he's trying to get back, I assume that's gonna play a big part in this whole situation.
You know what's crazy? He serves the same purpose as Kirsty does. Like, they do the same thing.
Yeah.
And Kirsty accomplishes it in 1 minute of archival like video footage. So
they do the terrible where like the two pinheads are facing off. It's like, hello, me, and it's like, don't do this.
It's all very strange. That whole aspect of because it's like Pinhead isn't Freddy.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why do this one-liners now?
Yeah. Okay, so because there's a scene and where Pinhead's in a church and he's like chasing Terry, and he finds her in a church and there's like a priest, and then he like gives himself the stigmata, and he like goes.
So good.
It's a super cool scene, but it feels like Freddy Krueger would do that scene as opposed to.
He's taunting a bit much. No, but I don't know.
I like does taunt. He doesn't taunt. Oh, go ahead.
No. We were all speaking over each other. No one like.
Like, yeah, because Pinhead taunts, but not like that. That feels like a Freddy taunt, you know.
I do like earlier in the movie when he's coming out of the pillar and they go like, Jesus Christ, and he goes, not quite. So it's like, that's the kind of dry Pinhead.
That's Pinhead, right?
Yeah.
Pinhead
like,
isn't Pinhead's snarky. Pinhead is like very direct, and so sometimes that can be like a little funny, but he's not quippy.
Yeah.
He shouldn't be.
Yeah.
He's not welcoming you to primetime, bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
No. And when Freddy does it, it's iconic. And when Pinhead does it, it's confusing. Also, the stigmata scene is, of all the Hellraiser movies I've seen, it's the only scene I've had to look away from for gore. It's so gross. I could not watch it. I almost threw up. It's
a cool scene. It takes a long time.
It's real nasty.
Yeah. I feel like this movie, like, even though this movie is like a different tone, I do still like they kept a lot of the similar like practical effects. Like when JP feeds the first girl to the pillar, like Pinhead picks her up and he like rips off all her skin and you see her like, and the actress who's playing it, I think her name's A.G. Smith, she has like huge eyes. And so when you take all the skin off of her, it looks even worse. Like, it looks terrible and gross, you know? And so I really like that.
It's good until he starts eating her. And then it's like, this effect is not good. But the actual skin ripping effect looks awesome.
Yeah,
You know,
he
they
like
do it.
eats her like he's
It might
like
be the best
straight-
one of the first 3 movies.
It looks really good. It looks super cool.
And that,
And so
that scene starts with like a pretty long sex scene with him like banging out his like groupie.
The only important
He-
scene in the movie, if you're asking me.
He's such a hedonist. He's smoking during it, and I was just like, doesn't that really like diminish? Like, isn't that like having your dessert during dinner?
right, what are you
He
doing after
could, like
this,
put his
Not as
cigarette
good.
on her or something.
yeah.
Yeah, like
If I was directing
Yeah.
this movie, that's what I would have done.
And I do like, and he's like spread out. You never see a guy as spread out as JP is in like a mainstream sex scene, because his arms are like all leg. Like I don't. It was.
He's like he thinks he's like a god, and he is.
Yeah. And yeah. Well, and I do want to say, okay, so that scene is cool, and then he calls Terry, and Terry goes over, and so he's trying to get Terry to like, come to me. I want to give you a hug and forgive you, but he's just trying to get her near to the pillar, and Terry keeps like saying no, and she's finally grown, and then he like tries to drag her and beat her up, and then she like punches him.
with a brass knuckles.
Which is also like, Terry, you had these brass knuckles. You waited a very long time to pull them out. Because he like dragged her from the bed. He was like pulling her, and like her shirt was like riding up. Like that had to hurt. Even like in real life when they were filming, it had to hurt a little bit. But anyway.
She was looking for the brass knuckles that we all knew she had the whole time.
Right.
It took so long.
It did not come out of nowhere. But then she's like gonna leave. And Pinhead like stops her, and he's like starts talking to her, and she's been kind of like the whole movie. Her character's like she's kind of depressed. She's kind of like
she
this sad
doesn't
person.
dream when she sleeps, which is actually a thing that can really happen. Some people
Mhm.
don't actually have dreams when they go to sleep.
It
And
is,
that's
and it's so it would be more interesting in a nightmare movie.
yeah, that is.
Yeah.
I do kind of feel like this movie might have been a nightmare movie. They just kind of switched names.
This one's
really
funny
feels
too. Like Terry didn't open the box. There's no reason she should have stayed in the room after she saw him like violently murder JP Monroe.
JP didn't open the box.
Right.
No,
Well,
just open the box.
he bought the statue, and he's a hedonist, so he was on board. There's
Yeah,
no reason
JP
she should have been on board.
Yeah. Well, but I really like that scene because it kind of shows, like, we've seen the JP, and the uncle, like, when they want to do it because of this sense of like they've already tasted every vice, and so they want that last one.
Yeah.
But seeing Pinhead talk to Terry, you kind of see the other allure of like Pinhead's like, you've been searching for like answers and for a way to like connect your entire life. Let me give that to you. And I think that's, if anything, like I know there's a lot of scenes in here that doesn't feel like Pinhead, but I really like the way they wrote Pinhead in that scene just because it does feel like this guy could be charming enough, despite the fact that he literally has pins on his head, to convince you that what you want is what he wants. And I mean, that was top notch. The movie's good for that scene alone. It's so good.
I think he courts Terry for the same reason the Cenobites go after Kirsty, right? Like it's someone, who they either correctly or incorrectly believe is unfulfilled, and there's great territory to manipulate and corrupt there. And I think that is why the Cenobites answer when Kirsty opens the box. Because remember, as established in Hellraiser 2, if you open the box but you don't want anything, the Cenobites will leave you alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think he's attracted to her for the same reason that they are ultimately come for Kirsty, is that their current lives are unfulfilling in some way to them.
Yes, yeah, and I really, and I love that they showed that aspect of it and the way Pinhead can kind of get in your brain. And also, okay, so after that scene, Pinhead is out. He's no longer confined by any limitations.
Can I say too, because JP Monroe lives above a bar, and like he owns the bar. He's a very
the
wealthy,
most soundproof apartment in the world. Yeah.
It should have been a Matrix style BDSM bar, because that would have been like, okay, Pinhead's like going after people who are like kind of halfway in that world. But there were guys just like shooting pool. It's like, do those guys deserve to get chained to death by Pinhead? I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh, and it's funny, like
It was also
there's a scene where
a classy restaurant.
Yeah.
it was everything they wanted it to be.
There was,
I mean,
there was a
and he's
classy
right.
restaurant. There was a dive bar. There was like a rave bar section. This bar has everything.
Yeah.
It's
Like
like
as soon as JP closes the door, every sound from that bar is gone. You can't hear anything that's going on outside the door.
He is rich, so he probably soundproofed his floor and walls.
Yeah, it'd be funny if Pinhead just couldn't get out because the door was so like air sealed shut. But yeah, and then that leads
Pinhead
to
does seal
another.
some doors shut. Pinhead does seal some other doors shut later.
Yes, yeah. And that scene leads to another. So Pinhead's out, he comes out, and then he goes down to the bar and he kills the bar / restaurant / club that everyone in LA is at, New York. And he kills everyone. I mean, it was crazy how many people he killed. Like, you just hear things going off. You see, like, people getting chains shot through. And again, from every rule established, none of those people wanted any of that. But Pinhead was just like, whatever, I know you want something. And so he just kills everyone.
It's crazy, and it's not Pinhead, but it is very Hellraiser, I think. All the violence is. And it's very cool too. So like I'm a big believer in rule of cool should come first. And so I'll allow it because if I'm buying into this movie's explanation that the pure Cenobite and the pure human parts of Pinhead have become separated, and that the Cenobite is what we were told the Cenobites were in the first two movies, which is unshackled sensation. Sure,
Makes sense.
I could see him having absolutely no restraints, and looking back, because we now know that the Cenobites were partially human, their restraint is consent, right? Like the Cenobites require consent of some kind to interact with you, if we will. And in this movie, he removes the need for that by removing his humanity entirely. So that's an interesting concept, but I feel like there's a better way to explore that than the dumb dream stuff. Because the dream stuff is very dumb, and I feel like I can't emphasize how dumb it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And they like the dream stuff is also like the amount of budget that went to the dream stuff. Like you have World War II, you have Vietnam sets, you have to mix them all together, you have to get the costume. Like just
also, it's very
kill more
people. I wouldn't really associate like war with like the Cenobite thing, because they're more like about like self harm, like it's not like war.
Yeah,
just
it's
seems
like
a
war,
violence.
good or bad, war always has a goal at the end of it, and the Cenobite's more like it's more about pleasure than necessarily like, oh, if you get this, or we want this is
because
the
even
it's
good
endless pleasure and pain mixed all together.
That's why it makes sense as a backstory for Pinhead, right? Because it's a desensitization thing. But it doesn't make sense as like I don't know, as the ongoing story for him, I guess. Like
it feels weird that it defines him in that way.
Yeah. Because when I think of Pinhead, the first thing I think of is not he was a soldier at one time. It's not the first thing that comes into my head.
Yeah, and I will say about that club scene, like it's done well, and I really like. There's like a scene, like you get this shot where everyone thinks they're gonna get out, and they're like running towards the door, and then Pinhead closes it, and then the camera we go on the other side of the door, and you just hear chains going off, and then slowly blood starts to drip down the door, and you're like, that was so cool. It was such a great shot.
How did you guys feel about the cop scene
So
where
stupid.
they kill a bunch of cops?
See, again, cut the other 2 Cenobites, cut that whole mess, but also cut like 1 or 2 of the deaths from the club, like the water death that didn't really make any sense, and
Right.
I was really confused by that. And I have been every time I watched it. I was like, so he becomes ice and impales her and then just stays there, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, it's okay. It's like, yeah, I remember watching that and be like, he didn't have, because he comes out and it's his
It's another
face.
power he hasn't had before.
Yeah, and then he like tells her, and then he like turns into a spear and then stabs her. And I was like, Pinhead didn't have to come out. Like he just wanted to be mean.
Exactly. Like, cut that one. I don't know, cut a couple, maybe 1 or 2 more. And add some interesting set pieces to the Joey chase. Because
Right.
all of the environment stuff in the Joey chase is really cool. And every time she interacts with another person and that person gets killed, it's really stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
I also
as silly as it is, I like when all the water starts coming and the wires are like, electrifying it and she has to run up on the, like, that's funny because it's part of it, it's
yes.
pushing her forward, right? It's literally pushing her to the destination. And all the explosions and stuff, that shit's cool. I almost wish it had just been like bigger stunts in that way, like bigger, like Pinhead controlling the environment to lure her to the final confrontation. I think
that'd be interesting. Yeah.
Or I think it even would have been cool because like there's that scene where she goes and sees the aftermath of the murders, and like that scene was generally terrifying, and like because like she's going through all these there's so many bodies that she can't even walk without stepping on someone, and I feel like they could have like made that set, because it was a great set, just made that into like maybe Pinhead's turning that build the nightclub into, I mean, it's been such a big set piece throughout the whole movie, just put the climax there. Yeah, I would have preferred that as opposed to like the walking down the street He-Man style ending.
Yeah. I mean, it's very of its time, right? And so I can appreciate that, like, literally some of the shots are like from above and like her running. I'm like, this is very 90s TV. But I can appreciate that aspect of it while also just wishing, like, I wish it was just more Joey focused. Like that chase scene. It feels like it's Joey just getting a bunch of other people killed.
She gets so many people
Granted,
killed.
she tries really hard to like get them to not die. They're just all so stupid.
Yeah, I do like that the priest is like, there's no such thing as demons. It's like, you gotta at least be a little bit skeptical,
guy. Is this not your job?
You can at least fake it till you
like
make it,
one
my
person
friend.
who should still believe in humans.
Also, okay, and I don't know if you guys will know this. Josh, you all have to tell me. Does it feel like this movie was shot where they shot Angel Grove for the Power Rangers? Because I kind of feel like a lot of it looked like Angel Grove.
I mean, it's been like, 25 years, but it does have that Southern California set look to it.
Which is like this because I just looked and this movie was filmed in NoCal.
Yeah. See, I kind of, it's such a, it's so funny. But yeah, and so she's getting chased, and there's like Cenobites, like he keeps making more Cenobites. Like Derek said, he makes one. There was the bartender who has barbed wire, and he has a bottle, but he's spitting out fire. It just feels like you spent a lot of time explaining why this guy's shooting fire when you could have just done.
The cameraman kills people and says that's a wrap.
The cameraman's making quips and like his lens shoots at, like, why doesn't the lens shoot lasers or chains or something? It just kind of like extends.
It's like the xenomorph. It's a xenomorph, right? Like the xenomorph tongue.
Yeah.
I think the Doc Cenobite is cool enough. where like I would just cut the other two and not him. I might design him a little differently.
Yeah. Well, and like the Doc, he's cool. It's just like Doc is such a weird character because he's throughout the whole movie and he becomes a Cenobite, but he's just kind of there to like be fed exposition and then to like give the reporter hugs. Like that's his only like role.
Yeah, I
In the
do feel
whole
like
thing.
there was a cut because he's even like, "Oh, he got me off screen. I'm a Cenobite now." She's like, oh, "Okay."
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know?
Show that a little bit. I think if they had used again some of that extra 10 minutes I'm trying to give it a scene between Doc and Joey, establish their friendship a little more, and show us how Pinhead got him. Because what? He's just there.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
convenient.
and it's
Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth.
But I do
well,
like
and
the
like
silliness.
they do like okay, because though at the end when Pinhead's like going to see her, then you find out that JP and Terry also got turned into Cenobites. And like JP's
JP
Cenobite
gets
is so
turned into a
weird.
Cenobite. We see Pinhead shove that piston in his head.
Yeah, and it's
And
like
also, but like all the Cenobites in this movie are just like, oh, you just had something shoved in your head.
yeah.
Is that
Where
just
I
what?
always thought like I always thought that like I didn't think Pinhead died by them shoving like the things in his head. I kind of like thought that that was like mutually agreed that they both wanted it the whole time. You know, like I didn't think that like oh they're gonna. I don't know. It just feels weird to be like the way you die is gonna play so much into your Cenobite outfit or like transformation. Where I thought it was more like you just kind of pick up stuff you like and then you do that stuff. You
Yeah,
know.
like as you become more demonic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like
This
maybe
was
Yeah,
the
this is
Chatterer started, and at first he had lips, and then like after 100 years, he's like, I don't want these lips
they
anymore.
really fast tracked the Cenobites in this one.
I guess he
Yeah,
was a little desperate for numbers, but if you, but why? He has the powers of a god in this movie. He doesn't need numbers.
yeah. He literally just killed an entire club. What does he need help for? Then, if anything, the other Cenobites just bumble everything up.
Also,
Now I
the
would say
JP
the ending.
Cenobite looks so stupid.
It does. It looks so bad, especially
Well,
It's
because
like
like
they're all
so
pretty bad.
it
bad.
doesn't look
It's,
like him at all.
it doesn't, and they should have kept his hair somehow. That should have been what the piston was. It should have been used to recreate his haircut.
That's the only way I can recognize him. It like JP looks like if you took a one of the mutants from the Hills Have Eyes remake and turned that person into a Cenobite. That's kind of what he looks like.
Yes, yes,
Just like
yes.
just like an elongated head. I don't know what's going on with
That's
what
the
happened in
piston.
between.
The skin like grew over it, I guess.
Yeah, and
I
then
didn't mean to cut you off, Andrew or Josh. I truly didn't. I was just like so angry about it again. All of a sudden, I had to
Get
say
it.
how stupid the
I
Cenobites in this movie look.
I did like. I don't like good head defeating Pinhead, but I do like her throwing the box into the concrete at the construction site, and then
that was cool.
it cuts to it built, and then like the
Mhm.
entire building's interior looks like a puzzle
It's a
box. I'm
big,
like, oh,
Would,
see, it like
wouldn't it have
warped
been
it.
cool? I don't know if you guys have seen the Hellraiser from last year, but wouldn't it have been cool if the building in that movie had turned out to be the building from this movie?
oh, that would have been
A
cool.
lot of things would have been good about the movie last year that didn't happen. So.
Also, Terry's Cenobite has like she has like a
She was
cigarette, like
just
her throat is
she was
open
just
here.
female. She was just female with a cigarette now.
Yeah. Which it's like, oh man, you guys like that is one of the cool things about the remake is that they introduce I mean they have the Chatterer, but all the other Cenobites are so different. And like it kind of shows you like look at how different you can make them.
They
And
have
this one they're just like
Chatterer and female. They have Chatterer and female.
right, right.
It's just that
But
they give female a name instead of just female. They call her like the Gasp or something. But
yeah. Well, it's yeah. And it's such a weird like, oh, we just have the female Cenobites costume from the last one. Just give it to her and put like a cigarette on there.
which
Like
is
you could have
crazy.
had her like
It's not even the
in
same.
her eyes. I know.
It's just they just reused the neck gina design.
And it would have been like you could have had her eyes closed because she's always dreaming now, you know? Something. Just add more.
Yeah, put like leather, like literally like stitched
Yeah,
onto
it's
her
like
face.
tearing it to her head. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think we need to remake this. And just like splice in all the JP scenes so he doesn't change his character at all. It's the same actor, all new people. But yeah, I don't know. I did like it. I did think it was fun. The climax, even though it's pretty big, I did like there's a scene where when Pinhead is confronting Terry and he's like walking and he's like just kind of like he still commands a presence and Doug Bradley obviously does a great job. It's kind of like there's so much potential. I think is the biggest problem with this movie, and I really wish that like there's just so much there. Like not even like oh you would have had to refilm it. Like no, you really just had to like kind of tweak it a little bit, and it would have really worked. You know.
there's a lot of this movie that like just tweak. It was just tweaks away from being like a genuinely really good movie. That said, this movie is still a lot of fun. And there are a lot of movies where being a lot of fun doesn't cut it for me. This is not one of them.
Yeah.
I enjoy this movie for its silliness, for its whimsical nature, if you will. Um, because I think there's enough actual good things here, unlike something like, I don't know, Freddy's Dead, which has no redeeming qualities.
Have you seen a different Freddy's Dead than the one that? Because we've seen the Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a different one, I guess, that you watched.
That's what I'm convinced. Everyone that had Hellraiser on their best of lists last year, I'm convinced Hulu gave me a different file or something, and that I just watched a different movie. Because there are so many people that I follow and respect who had it on their like their best of lists at the end of the year, and I was like, from what?
Yeah.
But we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about a better Hellraiser movie, Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth. And
yeah. Take the Cenobites from Hulu, put them in this movie, and you got that's all you need to do. Perfect. Don't do anything else.
Now, would you have liked the movie last year if the compact disc Cenobite had made an appearance?
You know,
Yes.
I would have given it an extra star on Letterboxd, that's for sure.
In the best scene where that girl's in the mental institution and it's slowly like becoming the labyrinth, and then you just see the CD guy. He's just hanging
that's
out.
the thing. The people who made it we know they're competent filmmakers, right? They made one of my favorite movies of 2021, The Night House, which I think is a masterpiece. And then they make this, and I just think it's not even so much that I would say it's a bad movie on its own terms, but I think it's a bad Hellraiser movie, and that's kind of important, right? Like,
Right.
I don't want to watch, like, a movie that's called Hellraiser and feels like it has nothing to do with Hellraiser.
Right.
Yeah, that's like most alien movies. You're like,
it's kind of like
anything like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing where I don't know. I just like I didn't connect to the. I feel like there was this thing that happened when the first Godzilla came out with like then that Ninja Turtles by Michael Bay came out, where I kind of felt like you guys spent a lot of time building up the mythical character, but you didn't build up like the leads, so I don't have any connection to them, so I don't really care. Like, you know, I think Pinhead in the remake is done well. I love the acting. I love the way she's presented or he's presented. They don't. He doesn't have pronouns in the.
I'm
remake.
pretty sure
Anyway.
Pinhead goes by she. They refer to her as she in the marketing, even though
but I don't remember them
in the movie. And I know, like Jamie Clayton, you know, is a woman, and I believe in like the lead up to like the interviews and stuff, they would use she for Pinhead. I think it's a different Pinhead. Like,
Right.
it's unclear at any point whether the movie is supposed to be a true remake or another sequel, which is made most confusing when they use the score from the original movie.
Yeah.
Granted,
but I would have used
the remake
that score
also uses the score from the original movie, and that's very clearly a remake. So it's not the best argument, okay? But like,
Yeah.
I kept hearing people say like people from the movie and interviews and stuff be like, it's not a true remake, and I'm like, okay, what is it then?
Right. It's and I feel like it's one of those things where people like they'll just say that to justify it, like the new that Kevin Smith He-Man show. Someone was like saying it was a spiritual sequel, and it's like I like that show, but it is not a spiritual sequel. It wanted to be like a real sequel to the show, and you can like it too. Just don't lie to yourself and say it's something that it's not.
Also, it can just be a remake of Hellraiser. You don't have to. The remake isn't, despite what some people online might say, remake's not a dirty word, right? There's nothing inherently wrong with being a remake of a film. We all liked that Texas Chainsaw remake well enough. Like,
yeah,
remakes can, and I famously really like the Friday the 13th remake. Remakes can be a lot of fun. They can be good. But I think it would have been more fun if they had just remade this movie rather than trying to write a whole new thing. Remake this movie, but with all of my suggestions.
Perfect. Yes. Suggestion number 1, no flashbacks to any war.
I am curious where it goes because I've never seen anything like I've passed this movie. So,
well, Hellraiser 4 is the only movie that is a sequel to this.
Really? I didn't know.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Everything after that is a complete standalone film, including the one that Kirsty's in.
Right. I do like, and that's the thing. Like, I know
none of them have anything to do with these first 4 movies.
Right. So I do know that Kirsty's.
Are you aware that Hellraiser 4 is in space?
Yes. I don't know anything about it. But
Hellraiser 4 is in space.
Is Good and Pinhead wearing an astronaut outfit this time?
If you thought this one was 90s, wait until he gets to space.
Wait until you see Pinhead in space. It is, Leprechaun went to space. Jason went to space. I think Pinhead actually might have gone to space first. I don't know about all the release dates on it, but that probably checks out.
Well, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Still,
we'll see.
I would still give this movie good marks. I'd still put it a little above 2.
I give it 10 out of 10.
I wouldn't do that, but it's good.
I give it 10 JPs out of JP. I think this movie's worth watching. I think it's fun in a way that especially maybe you saw the first 2 Hellraisers and they're a little bit much for you because they are more serious and darker. This one's a good one. Like, if someone who wasn't that into horror wanted to start getting into Hellraiser, it wouldn't be the worst idea to show this one first and then be like, it's going to get better from here. That was fun and kind of gets you in the mood, but let's get to the main course.
Sure. My one problem there is that someone who's not into horror might be really put off by all the gore in this movie, which is not necessarily this. It's not the gore in this movie is not like there's a different level here than the gore in the first 2 movies, right? Not in that it's like,
but it's like ridiculous,
more intense necessarily. There just is more of it, and I think Pinhead ultimately kills so many people that this movie kind of becomes really bleak, even as silly as it is. And it's bleak even just looking at the fates of characters like Doc and Terry, and even to a degree JP. Like, it's kind of a cynical movie in a way that I don't know that specifically Hellraiser 2, but even the first one are.
Yeah, I feel like in the first one, I mean, with Kirsty, of course, you're following such a good character, not good as in well written, even though she is, but I mean a good, pure character. And you do kind of get that in this one, but it's such a big ensemble that she's really, because in the first one you have the dad and you have her, and the second one you have Tiffany and you have her, and so you kind of feel that there's more good in the world. Where this one, it's not as much, and even Terry, who's good, is kind of like dealing with JP. She loves him. She can't break away. So like everyone's life is kind of shitty in this movie. Where like Kirsty's life is only made shitty by the Cenobites. Like she was having a pretty good time.
It was the
that point.
90s. We were all cynical then.
So. It's crazy to call a movie as silly as this cynical, and I recognize that. But I think a difference here, something that separates this movie, for better or worse, I'm not putting a value judgment on it. I'm just saying something that separates this movie from the first two is the shift from a villain protagonist in Julia to a hero protagonist in Joey. Because Kirsty is the final girl in Hellraiser and Hellbound, but she's not the protagonist. Julia is the protagonist of Hellraiser and Hellbound. And when we switch perspectives like that, I think it can be jarring tonally, which it is, right? If you watch Hellraiser 1, 2, 3 in succession, the third one feels really weird tonally, where the first two feel pretty on even ground tonally, right? Even if you think that quality wise they are not on even ground. But and then the fourth one just like is all over the place tonally. It's a weird movie, and that's really all you can have to prepare.
I'm curious.
And then it shifts back, though, because it shifts back to having a villain protagonist in 4, which is a thing.
Yeah, that is weird, yeah.
And
you know, the ones that I've remembered, because I remember the one with the guy from Oz, and then I've seen the one with Lance Hendrickson, and those also kind of have villain protagonists. Yeah. There's a lot of like, yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that a lot of the protagonists in this series are villains. Interesting.
Yeah, Lance Henriksen is quite the villain in his Hellraiser movie. That movie's just Pumpkinhead, if we're being real.
I haven't seen him forever. I just remember the Lance Hendrickson and what he's ultimately. I mean, you don't have him in a 2000s horror film without him being a little bit evil. But yeah, interesting.
And it's crazy.
This series is
as bad as 5 through 8 are. Nothing can prepare you for how bad 9 is.
Is 9 the one without him?
And Doug Bradley is not in 9 or 10. But right. 10 at least has a lot of stuff going on, so it's not boring.
I don't know if we'll get there. But
10 rocks. Let's be real. I mean, it suffers a little bit from there not being Doug Bradley, but it's a cool movie.
9, however, 9, I don't think there's anything good about 9, and I try and find something good to say about every movie. I've even a nice thing about Freddy's Dead in the past, and once on my own podcast when I covered that movie, because I said I had imposed a rule that we had to say something nice about every movie, and there were nice things to say. I'm not like, I think Hellraiser Revelations, it's hard to say definitively if any movie is the worst movie you've ever seen, but Hellraiser Revelations is definitely in my mind if I ever go there, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, Hellraiser Revelations, it's so bad that like the other day I was like at my parents' house and they have cable, so I was like flipping through cable and it showed up. And from like 1 second of footage, I was like, oh, that's Hellraiser, the bad one. Because it's so like, it's not just bad like story-wise, it's so incompetently made that it legit looks like not even like a college kid's movie. It looks kind of like when like a teenager has his family's camcorder and is using it to like make like his friends fight each other. You know, like it's such a bad looking movie. I don't know. It's almost funny how terrible it is.
Yeah, and I DM'd Andrew right before we started, and I was like, I think the transfer I watched was pretty shitty, because I did not stream this on HBO Max. I stream this on my Xbox through the Microsoft Movies app, and because a couple months ago it wasn't streaming anywhere, and so I just bought it in just like to have it if I ever wanted to watch it. And then I had a reason to watch it all of a sudden, so I was like, I will make that $3 purchase mean something. But it was so grainy. I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, especially because this movie isn't like, if anything, another good and bad thing about it is that the lighting matches the tone, but that's because the lighting is pretty bright. Like, it's surprisingly bright for a horror movie, and there's so many deaths.
It's surprisingly bright for a Hellraiser movie, especially. Mm-hmm. The first two lean into the gothic atmosphere, not only in set construction, but in how, they shoot the film. And this film is shot like a 90s action movie.
Yeah. But I like that about it.
I admire it. I think it's bold.
Yeah, I think it's a very good. It does kind of feel like a Freddy's Dead, not Freddy's Dead, but Freddy's Revenge situation where, like, you can tell that the creators like the characters and they weren't trying to like deviate. It's just kind of how they saw the character, like, like how Freddy's Dead doesn't really follow the continuity, but they're getting the basics right, and so it almost feels like a remake, but it's not really. And that's kind of how this feels. So, like, despite the flaws, I still think it's worth watching. I think it's good. I think you guys should check it out.
I know you keep meaning to say Freddy's Revenge and saying Freddy's Dead, but Freddy's Dead also looks like this movie.
Yes.
They're shot very well.
Freddy's Dead looks like a sitcom. Like, if you told me that those filmed on like the Roseanne set, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
That's why Roseanne's there.
Pinhead had been pushing a bed of spikes to land beneath someone and then wipe the sweat off his brow.
The only Freddy joke that I think is funny in Freddy's Dead, the only joke he has that I like, is when he is the Wicked Witch of the West. Yeah. And that's the nice thing. Because I'm like, that's Freddy, and then he keeps it up for the whole movie, and I'm like, this is a cartoon character.
Oh, man.
I mean, he's literally... And also, some of his jokes don't make sense in that movie. We don't have to go into it, but...
Yeah, it's a fun...
Needless to say, watch Freddy's Dead, watch this.
Watch Freddy's Dead, come back, watch it again, and then go see Hellraiser 3. And let us know.
And you'll have a better time the third time, because you'll be watching Hellraiser 3, which is a better movie.
Watch every episode of the Power Rangers and tell me what locations they used for this movie. Because I'm gonna put up. We haven't been doing this, but I'm gonna put up a shot of where Ivan Ooze came to life, and a shot at the end of this movie, and I'm gonna assume they're gonna be the same.
Right? Yeah,
we'll find out. Yeah, yes, but I feel like we'll see. If I'm right, you guys owe me a subscription. But anyway. Thank you guys for joining us on the Bomb Squad. It's always fun for Derek to come back. It's been a while. When was the last time we did one? Texas?
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw,
almost a year ago. It was for Texas Chainsaw, the new one from last year. That I liked. Didn't like last year's Hellraiser. I did like last year's Texas Chainsaw.
You didn't like the McConaughey Texas Chainsaw either. See?
No, I did like that movie, and I was very defensive of that movie. I just ranked it lower than movies I thought were made better.
Oh, that's right. I remember where you ranked it.
Yeah.
Only numbers count in this game. Yeah, and that was also another one where it's like I feel like me and Derek watched a different movie than everyone else because we liked that movie and everyone else hated it. But yeah, so thank you.
You win some, you lose some.
Thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you guys
next time. I wish I hadn't been so sick. Jesus.
I know. Corona, guys.
I don't think I have COVID. I'm throwing that out there for everyone.
Wear your mask.
I'm sorry. I was just kidding. I meant the era of Corona where people get more sick. But Derek doesn't have coronavirus.
No.
I realize now that I was misleading.
I have never had a recurring cough before, and I'm going on week 2 almost at week 3 of this thing, so I don't know what that's about. I don't like it though, and I don't recommend.
Getting sick.
Getting sick? I mean, yeah. I guess
Getting
I
sick,
wouldn't either.
like having a cough for more than like 4 or 5 days. It's a little
It
ridiculous.
starts to hurt. Then you wake up every day and your like abs are sore because you just like you don't realize until you go to sleep and like let them rest that they're like been in pain for the last 24 hours. Yeah, no fun. I
But
don't recommend getting guys
if you live with your parents, they'll leave you alone for long enough where you can watch Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth
and talk about it. Yeah,
and Jennifer's Body, because I'm prepping, not right now, but I'm prepping for another podcast sometime this week, this coming week, where I'm talking about Jennifer's Body, which is very exciting.
cool. Well, let us know, and I will put that link in our thing as well, so you guys can go check that out.
Click this link, and then you put it where I'm pointing.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like, click this link at the comments because that's where it'll be. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Bomb Squad.
Thanks for watching the Bomb Squad. Please, while you're here, give us a like and a subscribe. We really appreciate it, and it means a lot.